Okay, good morning, everybody. My name's Paul Watts, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. Before we begin, I'd actually like to introduce you to Jeremy Martell from the Cape Breton Partnership, and he would just like to make a couple of announcements before we get started. So, Jeremy, I'll hand it over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Paul. Can you make me out okay?
We can.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming today, everyone. As Paul mentioned, my name is Jeremy Martell. I work with the Cape Breton Partnership. We're Cape Breton Island's private sector-led economic development organization. And we're very happy to partner with Paul today and bring this presentation, this webinar to everyone. We know that with COVID-19, it has brought a lot of new challenges to our world, especially for our salespeople, but also provided kind of a new opportunity to force us to learn a little bit more about how to broaden our toolkit and how to do what we do. If anyone's interested, we also have an archive of our other webinars that we've held over the course of the last few months on our website, and I'll be including a link in the chat as we continue the webinar this morning. And if you have any questions, please pop that in there as well. Before I hand it back over to Paul, I did want to mention we have another program that we are highlighting and that we are launching. Pretty well right now. It's going to be a second offering from last year of a tourism operator focused program that offers training opportunities that run from hour-long modules to national certification to help you broaden all kinds of skills for your staff and to extend your seasons for tourism operators. Anything from customer service to food preparation to cleaning, everything in between. So I'll be adding a link as well to that program and how to take advantage of those offerings in the chat as well. And like I said, if you have any questions, please just let us know. In the meantime, Paul, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Social Selling Reinvented. Before we begin, I just wanted to give you a quick intro and just tell you a little bit about myself. So my name's Paul Watts. I am a sales performance coach with a company called Base Over Apex, which is a Calgary-based professional sales training company. I am also the host of the hugely popular Sales Reinvented podcast, which has over 200 episodes now, and we encourage you to go and check that out as a wonderful free resource. Another amazing free resource that I'm also involved with is the Sales Experts channel, where there are over 200 sales experts, and I'm one of the advisory board members and a panelist at the Sales Experts channel as well. So that's just a little bit about my background. I have more than 20 years of sales and sales leadership experience, both in Europe and more recently here in North America. And today, I want to talk to you about social selling and why social selling is so important. So this is going to be the outline of today's webinar. And I do want to point out to everybody that the webinar will be recorded and you will receive a PDF of the slide deck. And I have seen the first question come in, so I'm just going to quickly check that out. Oh, that's from Jeremy. So thank you, Jeremy. So without further ado, this is the outline for today's webinar. So we're going to talk about what social selling actually is, and then we're going to move on to why you should care. We'll talk about which social media platforms you should be active in. And then we'll move on into what are the key ingredients of a successful social selling program. And then we'll actually give you an example snapshot. And then we'll talk about the importance of being visible, being valuable, and getting connected with your network. So without further ado, let's get started and let's talk about what is social selling. Now, the fact that I'm the host of the Sales Reinvented podcast puts me in a rather unique position because it allows me access to literally hundreds of world thought leaders in a variety of different spaces around sales. And I've been fortunate enough to interview many of the Forbes top 30 social selling experts. And I've asked every one of them this question. I've asked them, what is social selling? And what was really interesting to me was that I never got the same answer from any two experts. Everybody had a different opinion of what social selling was and is. And For that reason, I've given this particular subject a great deal of thought. And my personal opinion is that social selling is like running a 365-day virtual trade show. It's where sales, marketing, and networking meet. And the reason I say that is because really the only place that those three disciplines coexist in the real world is actually at a trade show. And if you think about it, sales and marketing very rarely actually work together other than at a trade show. And of course, the networking component is only present at a trade show. So how do trade shows typically work? Well, usually what will happen is marketing will do their research and they will figure out, oh, this is the trade show that we should attend. And then they'll identify, where they would like their booth located at that trade show, where they're going to get the most foot traffic. And then marketing will actually set about designing and building the trade show booth, putting together all the marketing collateral that's going to be given away at the trade show. And of course, helping to organize the setting up of the trade show. That's typically where marketing will get involved. Sales involvement is usually the people who are asked to operate the booth at the trade show are usually from the sales department. So that's where sales will typically get involved. And then, of course, the networking aspect of attending a trade show is the function that sales perform at the trade show, where they'll step out in front of somebody as they're walking past the booth and they'll engage in a conversation, begin some networking, and hopefully convince them to come back and visit their booth and talk about how their organization could potentially help the client. That's how those three disciplines coexist in the real world. On social selling, they coexist in social media. So if you think about it, your company page on any of these social platforms, that's your trade show booth. And the content that you post, that is the marketing collateral. Those are the flyers and the brochures that you would hand out at the trade show. And of course, the networking component, that is the reaching out and making a new connection on any of these social platforms. So social selling is like running a 365-day virtual trade show. It's where sales, marketing, and networking all meet. And what's really, really interesting about social selling is that you actually can measure the success of your social selling program in exactly the same way that a marketer would measure the success of an actual trade show. So typically what a marketer will do when they are trying to determine how effective a trade show was is they've got two methodologies for determining the success of the trade show. The first one is that they take all the costs associated with attending that trade show. So they add them all together, the cost of renting the space, the cost of putting the booth together, the cost of producing the marketing collateral and taking it to the event. And then of course, the cost of flying the sales team to attend the event, putting them up in a hotel and having them operate the booth for the length of the duration of the trade show. They take all of those costs, they add them together, and then they divide them by the number of leads that they obtain at the trade show. And that is how they obtain what we call a cost per lead. The same way a marketer would determine a cost per sale. So that the actual sales that were generated at the trade show, they do exactly the same thing. They take all those costs, they add them together, and then they divide them by the number of sales or by the sales that were made during the trade show, and they have a cost per sale. Social selling is measured in exactly the same way. So you take all the costs associated with operating your social selling program, you add them all together, and then you divide it by the number of leads that you have obtained from social media, and then you divide it by the sales that you've made. So you get a cost per lead and a cost per sale for your social selling program. Now, what's really, really interesting is that the cost per lead when we talk about social selling is significantly lower than the cost per lead at a trade show. And the return on investment that you will get from social selling is significantly greater if you do it right. But this is really, really important, team. Social selling is like going to the gym. You don't get a social selling six-pack going to the gym 3 times. You've got to do it consistently, and you've got to do it over an extended period of time, and you can't expect the results to happen all at once overnight. It takes time. It takes time, effort, and consistency. So that's really, really important to note. So to that end, I am just going to check the chat box again, because I did see another chat come in. And again, it looks like it was from Jeremy, so that's great. But if you have any questions as we move along, please do feel free to chat them in. I will address the questions at the end of each slide, but there will also be a section at the end where we'll have an opportunity to actually go through some questions. What I'll also mention right now is that I am going to offer to do a critique of someone's LinkedIn profile. But in order for me to do that, that person would have to be a connection of mine. So what I would ask is, if you are interested in having your LinkedIn profile critiqued, and if you've got pretty thick skin and broad shoulders and you're willing to take the constructive criticism, please feel free to send me a LinkedIn request now. And what I'll do is I'll pick one of the LinkedIn requests that I've received, and that'll be the one that I choose for the actual profile. Okay, so we just had one quick question come through from Nicole, and she said, is TikTok considered to be a valuable social media, especially if your business is connected to young people? That's a great question, Nicole. And if I may, I'd like to answer that in about 2 slides. I'm not ready to answer it just yet, but I promise you I will answer that question. Okay, so with that, let's jump into the next slide. So the next slide is, why should you care? So we've talked about what social selling actually is. Now let's talk about why you should care. And I'm actually going to build this slide first, and then I'll talk about the statistics. So the first statistic that you see here, this is from Forbes, is that 72.6% of salespeople who use social media outperform their sales peers who did not. That's a pretty compelling statistic. IBM was one of the first Fortune 100 companies to actually run a social selling pilot program. And during their social selling pilot program, they actually saw a 400% increase in sales. IBM was one of the first Fortune 100 companies to institute a global social selling program, and it was on the back of their very, very successful pilot program. On average, 78% of customers say that they use social media as part of their buying process. And interestingly, that number increases to 84% when we are talking about C-level executives. So when we're talking about people in the C-suite, 84% of C-suite or C-level executives will actually check you out on social media. They'll check your LinkedIn profile, they'll check your company profiles out on social media before they will even agree to meet with you. This one's very compelling. A warm referral increases the odds of sales success by 2 to 4 times. That is a LinkedIn statistic. So if you can get a warm introduction or a warm referral from somebody, from a common connection, you are between 2 and 4 times more likely to close that deal than if you just went in cold. That one is huge. Now just think about it. Think about the last time you hired a tradesperson to come and do some work on your house. Very strong chances that you actually took a referral from somebody. You asked somebody if they could recommend a plumber or if they could recommend an electrician, and you used that referral as a basis for making a decision. Warm referrals increase your chances of success by 2 to 4 times. Now, on average, social media users are 23% more successful than their non-social media peers. So in other words, just using social media and using it effectively, you will sell 23% more than your colleagues that are not using social media. So that's a very compelling stat on its own. And then this one's huge. People who have an SSI, a social selling index score of above 70, achieve 200% more meetings, more opportunities, and more new clients compared with their peers. That is huge. I can't stress this enough. That is absolutely huge. Now, if we looked at any one of these statistics, and by the way, I have, 30 or 40 more statistics that are equally compelling. But if we looked at any one of these in isolation, you could argue the point. But I think, when you combine all of these statistics together, it's pretty compelling that social selling and the use of social media as part of your sales process and your marketing process is extremely important for your business's success. Okay, I have got a question that's come in, so I'm just going to address. So Wanda has said, what is a social selling index? That's a great question, Wanda. Thank you for asking. So what I will do, I will send a link out after the webinar is complete, and it'll have a link to the actual recording, and it will have a link. It will also include a PDF of this slide deck. But what I will also do is I'll include a link to LinkedIn Social Selling Index. So if you follow that link, you'll actually be able to go and see what your score is. And it also gives you advice on what you need to do to improve your score. So, okay, so let me move on to the next slide, which is which social media platforms should you use? Now, I'm getting a message that says that my audio is low quality. Hopefully, I'm coming through okay, loud and clear. Could somebody just chat me a message and let me know that my audio is still very clear for you? If you could just drop me a quick chat and just tell me that okay, I've got chat messages coming through. It cracked there, but it's clear now. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so which social media platform should you use? Well, there are about 37.5 million Canadians right now in Canada. So let me ask you this question. Of those 37.5 million, about 6.5 million are under the age of 14. And approximately 6.5, just maybe almost 7 million are over the age of 65, which actually means that there are 24 million Canadians between the ages of 14 and 65, which incidentally is the highest demographic range of social media users. Very few social media users under the age of 14 and very few over the age of 65. The vast majority of social media users are actually between those two age bands. So let me ask you, the very first icon you see here, Twitter, how many Canadian social media users? What do you think? Send me chat in your messages. Let's have a look, and I'll read out what everybody has to say. So how many Twitter users? What do you think? 24 million Canadians. How many Twitter users? So just chat in. Okay, Andrew says 3 million. Thank you, Andrew. Anybody feel differently? We've got 3 million so far. Anybody think more? Anybody think less? Wanda says 9. Jeremy says 7. Okay, so we've got some numbers coming through. I'll let a couple more come through, and then I'll give you the answer. Okay, just one more then. Just one more answer. Okay, thank you, Ori. 17 million. All right, so the actual answer is there are 7.6 million Canadian users. Now, what's interesting about Twitter is that platform has actually started to plateau now. So we don't see a rapid rise in users. But what we have found is that the 7.6 million users are very loyal to the platform and do use it regularly. I'm one of those users, and I'm logging into Twitter every day. So what we do find is that the people who do use the platform are very loyal to it. What about the next one? That is Instagram. Now, we couldn't cover them all. We covered what we call the big five. But let's talk about Instagram, which... how many Instagram users do you think? All right, Andrew says 13 million. Okay, that's an interesting number. Anybody feel differently? All right, Jeremy says 4.5 million. Thanks, Jeremy. Nicole says 10. Okay, thanks, Nicole. Shirley says 8. I'll let one more vote come in, and then I'll release. And Ori says between 10 and 12. So the actual number is actually very close. Ori, it's 11.8 million, and Instagram is still rising. So we do expect that number to continue to increase. And again, Instagram users are very, very loyal. So 11.8 million Canadians using Instagram. What about this next platform, LinkedIn? What do we think, team? How many users on LinkedIn? Canadian users. 35 people. Thanks, Andrew. That's it? Just 35. Wanda says 5 to 7 million. Okay. Jeremy says 2 million. Okay. Andrew doesn't think there's very many at all. Ori's saying about 5. So everybody's thinking less. Okay, this is interesting. I think this is going to surprise you. The number's actually over 16.2 million. I know the slide says 15.5. It's 16.2 million today. So that number is rising rapidly. LinkedIn is increasing at about the same rate that Instagram is. And that Andrew asked an interesting question. He said registered versus users. And Ori says, would they be active users though? So that's a great question. I'm going to say that these are active profiles. As far as regular users, we don't have that number. LinkedIn are very guarded about, how often people log in and how long they spend on the platform. My guess would be that LinkedIn's user base is probably not quite as loyal and don't check in quite as frequently as Instagram or Twitter. But I can tell you, I log into LinkedIn more than any of the other platforms because for me, it's the most powerful business platform. Andrew just makes a very interesting point. He says he's had an account, but he hasn't logged in for maybe 2 years. So you would be one of those active accounts. It's active. It's but you're not using it. Okay. What about this next platform, Facebook? How many Canadians? Remember, 24 million between the ages of 14 and 65, 37.5 million Canadians total. How many? Ori says 20 million. Okay, that's interesting. Wanda says about 14. Andrew says 27. Jeremy says 20 million plus 1. 20 million plus 1. Okay. Maybe you have to explain that one, Jeremy. So we got 27. Nicole says, 20 to 22. Let me tell you that there are 23.8 million active Facebook users, 23.8. So very big social media platform. And what about the last one that we picked here? What about YouTube? How many active Canadian users? YouTube. What do we think? Let's see the votes coming in. So YouTube. No one wants to put. Andrew's there. 11 million. Thanks, Andrew. Ori, 14. Jeremy, 12. 8, 15 from Nicole. Okay. I'm going to fire the answer up. You obviously didn't see a trend. These were trending in one direction, team. So let me share with you that there are more than 25 million active Canadian users who are watching an average of 292 minutes of video per month. And I don't mind telling you, my children account for more than 3/4 of that stat. My 2 children account for more than 3/4 of that stat. Yes, and you know what? You're absolutely right. A lot of people go into YouTube but don't have profiles. Yes, you can be a user on YouTube without having a profile. That is very, very true. All right, team. So what I want to ask is, which of these platforms should you be using and why? And of course, we didn't mention Snapchat, Pinterest. We didn't mention TikTok or Shaper. Anybody heard of Shaper? SHAPR, Shaper. Anybody heard of Shaper? That's an interesting one. I just wonder if anybody, no idea. Nope. Okay. So for those of you that haven't heard of Shaper, Shaper is Tinder for business. Okay. So think of Tinder. For those of you that don't know what Tinder is, Tinder would be, I guess, some kind of dating app where you put a profile on and you're trying to find a date. basically Shaper works in the same way. I don't think I think on Tinder you swipe left or right. On Shaper you either press a yes check or a cross, but you get 15 matches every day, and you get the opportunity to, if you both have said yes, then it connects you, and then you can actually reach out and have a conversation. So you build a profile like you would on LinkedIn, and you explain why you're on Shaper, and what kind of businesses you're looking to meet, and what kind of networking and connections you want to do on Shaper. And then people look at your profile, and if your profile appeals to them, they will also check yes to meet you. It's a very, very interesting and very quick growing platform, actually. So my question is this: which of these social media platforms should you be using? What do you think, team? Okay, so Wanda says all of them. Andrew says it depends on your business, and Demo. We've had a few people who say it depend on your target. Shirley says all. I'm kind of between all and it depends. For me, what I would suggest is the hardest part of using social media to drive revenue for your company is creating content. Creating content that is engaging is one of the most challenging facets for any business. So I think, for me, these are all content sharing platforms. And as we can see, many of our customers are active in these platforms. So I would think of these as fishing holes. I would fish where the fish are. So if you know that your target demographic are using YouTube, which clearly they are, and that they're using Facebook, which clearly they are, and a large percentage of them are using LinkedIn, which clearly they are, and a large percentage will be using Instagram, which clearly they will be, why not use them all? Why not use all of them? The hard part is actually creating the content. Sharing content across platforms is actually very easy. There's software that will do it for you. So why not use them all? So to the point that, to the question that was asked earlier about TikTok, if your target market is young people, TikTok has an extremely high demographic of young users, of millennials and zennials. So if your target audience are millennials and zennials, TikTok would make the ideal platform, or an ideal platform for you to be using. So I'm going to suggest, fish where the fish are. Choose the platforms that are most appropriate for your target audience, and you know what? Use as many of these as it seems relevant to your business. So with that, I am going to just run a quick poll now, and I want to get a sense of which social media platforms you're all using. And this is one of those check all that apply. So don't just pick one and then close out. Which social media platforms do you currently use? I'm very interested to find out. So I've launched the poll. I can see the votes are coming in. That's great. So yeah, just let me know which platforms you're currently using. I can see we've got about 30% of our attendees that have voted so far. So that's great. Please keep those votes coming in. Yeah, I'm just seeing there's some obvious ones that are climbing the charts. Okay. Yeah, this is interesting. So we're about halfway through the votes. And I am going to just leave this open and try and get as many of the attendees to vote as possible. So right now we're at 12 of 21. So that means that basically, 9 of you have either skipped away from the computer and are doing something else, making a cup of tea, going to the washroom, or you haven't been able to find the poll. So hopefully the poll showed up for everybody. Okay, we got 13. One more person came back with their hot cup of tea, I imagine. Okay, I'm going to leave it open for 10 more seconds, and then I'm going to close it. So we're at 60% voted. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Oh, someone snuck in right at the end. All right, I'm going to end the poll. So we didn't get as many votes as I would have liked, but let me share the results with you. So no surprises, which was the leader. It was Facebook. I expected YouTube to have a higher number than just 4 of the people that voted, but so that kind of does not jive with the stats that we got from ComScore. But yeah, Instagram, very popular. Next most popular, actually, after Facebook, which again is somewhat surprising given the number of users that LinkedIn has. No one's using Shaper yet. Wow, no one's using Shaper. We got 1 TikTok user, 1 Snapchat user, 1 Pinterest user, 5 people on Twitter, and yeah, 6 on LinkedIn. Okay, so you'll get to see these stats in the recording as well. But again, I can't stress this enough. Your customers and your potential customers are in all of these platforms. So don't just fish at one fishing hole. Try a few of the fishing holes. You will start to see that you might be surprised where you start to get some of your success from. So with that, team, let's now talk about. Where's my computer? There. Okay, so let's talk about what are the key ingredients of a successful and sustainable social selling program. Oh, I just had a quick chat message come through. Oh, and Jeremy's just sent a reminder to everybody. That's my my LinkedIn URL. If anybody's interested in a critique, please do send me a connection request. I can see some connection requests have come through, which is great. So I'll be picking one of those after we finish this section of the presentation. So first step in building a successful, sustainable social selling program is to conduct a social selling snapshot. Now, effectively, what a social selling snapshot is a competitive SWOT analysis of how your company compares to your competition in social media. So what you do is you would compile a list of your top 3 or your top 5 competitors. And then what you do is you would look at each of your competitors and you would identify which social media platforms they are active in. Which social media platforms are you active in? How many followers do they have in each of their social media platforms? How many followers do you have in each of your social media platforms? How often do they post in their social media platforms? How often do you post in your social media platforms? What kind of engagement rates are they getting on their social media posts? What kind of engagement rates are you getting on your social media posts? Which posts have the highest engagement rates and on which platforms for your competition? Which posts have the highest engagement rates and on which platforms for yourself? And what you're trying to do is you're trying to establish a benchmark to determine how you rank at the beginning of the program in comparison to your competition. That's the very first step that we would recommend to anybody who is considering embarking on a social selling program, is you need to understand where you are. What are we doing today that we're doing well, and what are we not doing that we should be doing? And the only way you can identify that is to force rank yourself against the competition, is to compare what your competition are doing, what's working for them, what's not working for them, what's working for you, what's not working for you. So step 1, we conduct a social selling snapshot. Now, after we finish this part of the program, I will actually show you a quick example of what a social selling snapshot looks like so that you've got a sense of how you could go about building one. Step 2 is we need to set a SMART objective for the program. Now, my recommendation is if you want to make a very meaningful SMART objective, make it revenue-based. Give it a dollar amount. I want to generate $500,000 worth of new business through social media. I want to generate $50,000 worth of new business through social media. I want to generate $100,000 of new business through our social selling program in this fiscal year. Make the goal SMART. Be specific. Give it a metric and a time frame so it's measurable. Make sure that it's attainable. Don't set a goal that you can't attain. Those goals become demotivating. A goal should be just out of reach, but not out of sight. So make it attainable. Relevant, make it relevant. It's got to be relevant to you, to your company, and to your customers. Any of those three. And then, of course, a goal has to be time bound. It needs a start and an end date. Fiscal years have a start and an end date. You can also use other time bound elements such as frequencies and duration, but make your SMART objective for the program. Step 2. Step 3 is we need to determine what constitutes as a win for the program. We need to determine what are the success criteria. Now, this is really, really important. And again, depending on the size of your organization, there may be many, many people that are going to be involved in your social selling program. And what I will tell you right from the get-go is there are going to be people who think social selling is a waste of time. There are going to be people that say, social media is a waste of time. I'm not wasting my time with that. Our customers aren't on social media. If I had $1 for every time somebody said my customers are not on social media, I wouldn't need to go to work anymore. But the reality is your customers are on social media, and I just showed you the stats that prove it. So what we need to understand what constitutes as a win. So let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean by this. So let's imagine for a second that I'm starting a social selling program, and I write an article about a problem that my customers face in their industry and a potential solution for that problem. And I put a little call to action in that article that says, hey, if you've got this problem in your business and you'd like some support, give us a call. So a company that's never done business with me before reads that article online, on LinkedIn or wherever, and they then reach out to me and ask me for help. I go in and I help them and I generate some new business. Is that a win for the program? What do you think? Just chat me your answer. Is that a win for social selling? What do you think, team? Would that be a win for your social selling program? What are your thoughts? Just chat your answers over to me. Okay, so I'm not seeing any chat. Oh, Ori says yes, you engaged a potential customer. Okay, anybody? Andrew says yes because you've got a new lead from an account you've never done business with. Yeah. Anybody feel differently? Anybody think it's not? I'd love to know if anybody doesn't think that's a win for the program. For me, that is an obvious win. It's obvious. They didn't know you. You didn't know them. You weren't looking at them. They weren't looking at you, but they caught one of your articles online and something caught their attention and they reached out and they purchased from you. That's a win. Okay, same scenario. I've wrote the same article and an existing customer who does not use that service from me actually reads that article, and I've got a meeting with that customer next week to talk about something unrelated. I'm talking about something completely unrelated to that article about that product or that service that was mentioned in the article. So I go to the meeting with that customer a week later, and while I'm in that meeting, the customer says, oh, and by the way, do you have, talk to me a little bit about this. I have this problem in my business. Is that something you could help me with? And of course you say, yeah, that's something we can help you with. And you end up getting some business from that existing customer. Is that a win for the program? Okay, so Andrew says yes, because you've expanded what that client is buying from you. Okay. Ori says yes, it's still a win because it means they're interested in your company and you're getting extra business. Okay. Here's the question. Do you know that that is a win for the program? What do you think, team? Do you know that that is a win for your program? Remember, you already had a meeting. So Wanda says not yet. That's right. Yeah, you had a meeting scheduled with the customer already. And when you went to that meeting, you went through your agenda of the items that you wanted to cover, and they mentioned something else, but they didn't tell you why they were mentioning it. So the only way you would know if that was a win for the business is if you asked. So if you were thinking, I wrote an article on this last week and put it in social media, and this customer is now talking about that. I wonder if they saw the article. If you actually said to the customer, hey, we weren't here to talk about that today. Do you mind if I ask, why did you think of that particular problem today? If the customer said, well, actually, I saw your article last week on LinkedIn, and I realized you were coming in this week, so I figured I would talk about it when you got in. If you didn't ask, you wouldn't know that that was a win for the program. Now, this is where it gets really important. If I am against the social media program, if I think social selling is a waste of time, I'm going to tell you that that business was going to come in whether I wrote the article or not. But if I am for social selling, I'm going to tell you that every deal that I win is because of something I did in social media. So what becomes really important here when you start to run a social selling program is that you build a cadence of asking customers, how did you hear about us? If it's a new client, hey, how did you hear about us? How did you find out about our products or service? And you need to build that cadence in. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to attribute wins to your program. So you won't know whether the program is working or not. This is really, really important. You've got to determine and you've got to decide what constitutes as a win. What are your success criteria? And you've got to constitute what does not. You've got to decide what does not constitute as a win for the program, because it's really easy to attribute everything to the program and it's really easy to attribute nothing. We need to make sure that we're attributing real wins for the program to the program. That way we can start to see where we're having the most success. And what you can really do is you can actually even put promo codes on the articles and use different promo codes for different social media platforms. So this is how you start to realize which social platforms are driving the most opportunities and leads to your business. Because you might have posted it on LinkedIn, but you might have posted the same article on Facebook and Twitter. Well, but you've got different promo codes on those articles. So you might find that where you were expecting all the leads to come from Facebook, actually they're coming from Twitter, or actually they're coming from LinkedIn. And the only way you would know that for sure is by tracking the promo code. So again, got to determine what is a win for the program. Next, you need to identify a champion for your program. Your champion has to believe that social selling is the right thing for your company to be doing. They have to believe in it, and they have to be good at it too, because the champion is also going to be the coach. The champion is going to coach other people from your organization, other people from your team on how to do this. Your champion is going to tell people when they've done something really good and share their success. And your champion is going to coach people when they've done something wrong and where there's room for improvement. So we need a champion for our program. Without a champion, you don't have a program. The champion is accountable for the success or failure of the program. That person really, really has to drive this initiative. Next, we need to look and we need team buy-in. I can't stress how important team buy-in is for your social selling program. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I was actually trying to scroll through the, let me go back. So you need team buy-in. Sorry, I was actually trying to scroll through the messages because I wanted to make sure that we didn't have any new messages at the bottom. Okay, so team buy-in. Why is that important? The best analogy that I can give you is think of a bowl of fruit, a bowl of apples, and you've got one rotten apple. What happens to the rest of the bunch? They spoil quicker. When you've got one rotten piece of fruit in your fruit bowl, the rest spoil quicker. The same is true if you don't have everybody's buy-in when you're running a social selling program. Because what happens is that Fred says, well, if John's not doing this, well, why am I doing this? Why am I carrying John's? I'm not doing it. So what ends up happening is that Fred and John are not doing it. And then Sarah sees that Fred and John aren't doing it. So Sarah says, well, if Fred and John aren't doing it, I'm not doing it. And before you know it, no one is managing the program. No one is actually doing what needs to be done. So we need team buy-in. Everybody, and I mean everybody, has to be bought in. Everybody in your organization has a role to play in your social selling program. Not everybody's role is the same, but everybody has a role to play. Some people's roles are just sharing content. Other people's roles are creating content and sharing content. But again, everybody needs to know what their role is, and we need complete team buy-in. The next item is you need a closed loop plan. You've got to have a plan. You've got to have a plan that is written down. We say closed loop. By closed loop, what we mean is that there's a feedback loop in your plan. So as your plan is running, you can see whether or not it's working. And if it is, you keep doing it. And if it's not, then you change something. But it's closed loop. There's a feedback loop that allows you to make sure that the plan's dynamic and is able to change and adapt as needed. So we need a documented plan for what our social selling program will entail. Extremely important, team. Next, we need a social media policy for our organization. Now, I was going to run a poll on this, and then I decided against it. But I am going to ask the question: how many of your organizations have social media policies to the best of your knowledge? Just message across. Does your company have a social media policy? Yes or no? Just send it. Just chat your message in. So a couple of no's: Nicole, Andrew, Ori, Wanda. We do. So 3 no's, 1 yes. Okay, this is interesting. So it seems like no's are the majority at the moment. Any more panelists want to vote? Yeses or no's? So we've got 3 and 1. 3 and 1. I'll give you a couple more seconds. 3 and 1. 2 more. That's 5 and 1. 5 and 1. Okay. So it seems like the majority of you do not have a social media policy. Let me ask this question. If you don't have a social media policy, how do you know what you should, and probably more importantly, should not be doing when it comes to social media? If you don't have a policy, you don't know what's right, what's wrong. Should I be posting on LinkedIn? Should I be posting on Facebook? Can I share this article? Can I write an article? The second you attach yourself to a company on any social media platform, you are now representing that brand. You need to know what the rules are. You need to know what you should and should not be doing. And if you don't have a policy, you don't know the rules of the game. And if you don't know the rules of the game, how can you play the game? So let me ask you this question. Would there be any value to having a policy for your organization? And would you be interested in a free policy? You see, we actually built an editable social media policy. I worked with a team of HR professionals both in Canada and the US. So our policy does actually apply to North America. And it's a great starting point. The wonderful thing about it is because it's editable, you can change specific points. You can add pieces in or remove pieces out. So let me ask you, would there be any value if I were to share that with the rest of you after the workshop? Would there be any value to that? Okay, Nicole says yes, of course. Okay, then I guess we'll do that. So I will send an electronic copy of the editable version of that policy, and hopefully that's a good starting point. And if nothing more, it becomes a conversation point for your organization. You know, hey, how do we feel about that policy? We can change it. You can make it and adapt it to your specific organization, but it's a good starting point. So we'll share that with you after the webinar. As well as a policy, you need to be people's job descriptions need to change, because as I said earlier, everybody in the organization has a role to play. You know, from the office administrator to the receptionist to the janitor, everybody who works for that organization, the second they attach themselves to the organization on social media, they are now representing the brand. And some people do a better job of representing their brand than others. And some of us don't even realize we're representing the brand. So one of the policies that we have written into the policy is that we recommend you do not attach yourself to your company on Facebook. In fact, our recommendation is that you do not use your personal account for Facebook for business. We recommend you lock your privacy settings down to your private network, and you do not attach yourself to your company on Facebook. And the reason we make that recommendation is because we've all got that one friend on Facebook. And you know what I mean? We've all got that one friend that we would never invite to a company function, but we've all got that one friend who will tag us in posts that we didn't want to be tagged in, that will tag us in posts that maybe don't paint us in the light that we want to be painted in. And sometimes they'll tag us in a post where we're in a picture doing something that we didn't want to be in social media, and we certainly didn't want our customers and our colleagues to see. So I'm going to encourage you all to not attach yourself to your company on Facebook. That doesn't mean you can't like and share the content. Just don't attach yourself to that company in Facebook. That would be my recommendation. But we need to change people's job descriptions. That's really, really important. We need to give people the rules of the game and set expectations. This is what we need you to do. This is what we expect from you. So the policy and the job description changes help with that. The next item is social media training. Now, as a social media training company, as a social selling training company, you're probably going to think that this is the part where I tell you, this is the most important part. Well, it's not. It's not at all. In fact, it is important, but it's not the most important part. Social media is important. It's important you know how to navigate the different social media platforms. It's important you know how to use the platforms. It's important you know how to post on each of the platforms and how to share content and the different sharing techniques. And you need to know how to use those platforms effectively, but it is not the most important part of a social selling program. And any social media training company that tells you that it is lying to you, because the most important part is content. Now, we could have made this whole presentation about content, but I think there's more value to talking about the program as a whole. But content is by far the most important aspect of running a social selling program. If you do not have engaging content, you do not have a social selling program, period. And you need to build a content creation and a content curation strategy. Now, let me explain the difference between those two. So content creation is content that you have created. That could be a video that you've shot on your cell phone. That could be a little post that you've written. That could be a graphic that you've designed, an infographic. It could be anything. That's content that you have created. Content that you have curated is content that somebody else created that you believe your target audience will get value from, that you believe your target audience will find engaging. Now, what you've got to decide when you're building your social media program is what percentage of my content will be created versus what percentage of my content will be curated. Now, I don't mind telling you, we don't run any content on our Base over Apex social media platforms. And the reason we don't is we're running a big test that has been running for quite some time now. And we're actually comparing two sets of social media platforms. So we're comparing our podcast, which is the Sales Reinvented podcast, and those social media platforms against our Base over Apex platforms. One, we're producing no content for. The other, we're producing a lot of content for. And we want to just measure and see how those two social media sets of platforms perform. I don't mind sharing with you that for the Sales Reinvented podcast, 50% of the content is created and 50% is curated. Creating content takes time, energy, and money. Every episode we produce of the Sales Reinvented podcast costs us $1,000 to produce, and we put out an episode every week. We've got over 200 episodes now. There's a big investment in content. Ori says, can we get a link to the podcast? Absolutely. When I send out the follow-up email, I'll send you a link to the podcast for sure. No problem, Ori. Thank you for asking. So again, we create half of the content for our social platform for the podcast, and we curate content from trusted sources. So we've identified sources that we know create high quality content that we believe will resonate with our target audience. And what we do is we merge those two. So literally every post is alternating. One piece of content is ours, one piece is curated. And that's basically our strategy for content. But you've got to know what your strategy is, and you have to invest in content. Without content, you don't have a program, period. So my recommendation is this. If you are setting a budget for your social selling program, assign 90% of that budget to content creation. 90%. Absolutely 90% of that content to 90% of the budget to content. The other 10% will go on training and will go on the tools that you need to run the program. Again, training is a very small piece of it. And so many training companies will tell you it's the be all and end all. It is not. It is about content and it is about the tools. The training is a small piece. Now, Ori just asked a great question. Ori said, should we consider a podcast in our social selling program? And that's a great question. And the answer to that question is, if you believe that you have enough to say to keep a regular cadence of creating a podcast for your target audience, then yes, absolutely. Putting a podcast together is not difficult and is a wonderful way to engage with people. And I don't mind sharing with you, having a podcast gives you access to people that you might not ordinarily have access to, and actually elevates your status in the field in which you operate. So I was invited to join the Sales Experts channel because of the Sales Reinvented podcast. Why? Because I was interviewing the world thought leaders in sales from all over the world. And many of those thought leaders, what happens is that your status starts to elevate to the same status as the people that you're interviewing. So it actually was a wonderful way for us, for our organization, to elevate our status. And I absolutely categorically believe that the reason I was invited to join the Sales Experts channel was because of the sales calendar. What is the calendar? Why is that important? The calendar is critical for your content schedule. So, think about the year as a whole. I'm sure all of you have specific events that occur through your calendar year. So perhaps there's a trade show that you always attend, or perhaps you always have a summer barbecue, or perhaps there's a training event that you put on periodically throughout the year. Whatever it is, what you need to do is you need to create content to support those events. But in order to create the content, you need to know when the content needs to be created and when it needs to be shared. So for argument's sake, does anybody here have an event that they attend every year that they could just chat to me in the chat box? Is there an event that you attend every year that your organization attends? Perhaps you're an exhibitor at a trade show, or perhaps you put on an event. Does anybody have one that they'd like to share? And just tell me when in the year typically that event takes place. So has anybody got one that they want? Andrew says not at this point. Yeah, a lot of the trade shows are kind of on hold at the moment, I guess. But anybody got any events that they would normally attend? Okay, so, okay, great. Wanda says Investor Summit, which is in October, although it's not happening this year. So thank you for that, Wanda. That's a great example. So generally speaking, every October there is an Investor Summit, and Wanda, your organization would be in attendance. Is that fair to say? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So what I would recommend is that, if is it in the beginning or the end of October? Let's assume that it's early. So let's assume it's at the beginning. Now, if you're attending that event, you need to let all the other attendees know that you're attending, and you need to let people who might consider attending that summit know that you're going to be attending. So you need to be promoting the fact that you're attending. How long before that event. So if it's the beginning of October, I would suggest at least 6 to 8 weeks earlier. So if we go 8 weeks back, we're actually into August. So we need to be August, September for an October event. So we're going to be promoting this in August and September. That means we got to have content that's ready to go in August. So if we've got to have content that's ready to go in August, we need to have created that content in July. And if we need to have created that content in July, we probably started working on that content in June. So what this does, having a calendar actually allows you to reverse engineer when the content needs to be created. So I don't mind sharing my content, my podcast. We have podcasts built, produced, scheduled for release all the way up to the end of October. When I'm producing my content, I build it in batches and I schedule it out so that I have a steady stream of content. So again, you need to have a calendar of events. You need to identify and make sure that your content coincides with those events. So that's again, very, very important for a successful social selling program. Next, you need to have milestones and you need to celebrate milestones. So when you get your first 500 followers or your first 500 connections on LinkedIn, that's a milestone. Celebrate it. The first time somebody lands, a $5,000 order, that's a milestone. Celebrate it. The first time somebody lands $1 million order, that's a huge milestone. Celebrate it. So you've got to identify milestones for the program, and you need to celebrate them. There are also going to be metrics that you need to track. And there's two types of metric. There are vanity metrics and there are sanity metrics. So let me explain the difference between vanity metrics and sanity metrics. A vanity metric feeds your ego. A sanity metric feeds your family. So let me give you a difference between the two. I posted an article on LinkedIn going back about 4 months now, and it was one of my more popular articles. It got 183,000 views. There were 400 or 500 likes. It was shared a couple of hundred times. It was a very, very popular article, and it generated 0 revenue for my business. That's a vanity metric. Vanity metrics feed your ego. Sanity metrics feed your family. I had another article that I published a couple of weeks earlier that only got a couple of thousand views, but those views generated 4 inquiries, 2 of which turned into deals. Sanity metrics feed your family. Don't get hung up on the vanity metrics. They're important. You need to follow them. You need to understand them. They are important, but you can't lose sight of the sanity metrics. Don't worry about how many sets of eyes your content has. Worry about, did the right people see it? Because I would rather have 100 of the right people see my content than 100,000 people who couldn't care less about sales training. So again, vanity metrics feed your ego. Sanity metrics feed your family. The next thing that I'm going to recommend is that you build a client-centric profile. Client-centric profile. Your profile is not a resume. Think of it as a micro website, and that micro website is promoting both you and your organization. You're building your personal and your professional brand. You're building your brand, and you are an extension of the company's brand. You need to build a client-centric profile. LinkedIn is the #1 professional networking platform on the planet. And if any of you have ever been to a networking event, you didn't show up with a stack of resumes. Hi, Paul Watts, here's my resume. Hi, I'm Paul Watts, here's my, you didn't show up with a stack of resumes at a networking event. So don't show up on the world's #1 professional networking platform with a resume. So many people say to me, LinkedIn is a waste of time. The only people who call me are recruiters. Well, if you put a resume on there, what did you expect? If you want customers to call you, build a client-centric profile. We're going to talk a little bit more about that when we do a critique. You need a way of dealing with negative comments. They will happen every once in a while. You're going to miss the mark with a piece of content, and you're going to get some negative feedback. You need to have a process for how you follow and how you deal with negative feedback. Or if somebody's had a negative experience with your company or your service, they again may post a negative comment. You've got to have a professional way of dealing with that. I use the AIR squared approach, AIR squared. I would first apologize for their experience and acknowledge what has happened, and then privately, offline, I will investigate with them and try and resolve the problem and relate and respond back to them. So I'm really looking to try and resolve that problem for them and make them satisfied. Believe it or not, when you make a mistake, if you go over and above to fix it, sometimes the customer is more satisfied with you than if you just got it right in the first place. So, it's how you deal with mistakes, and it's how you deal with those negative comments in social media that sets you apart. Don't be one of those companies that argues with the person who's made the negative comment. Don't be one of the people that disputes it. Apologize and acknowledge, investigate privately, and then relate and respond publicly. The next is coaching. Again, your champion needs to be providing ongoing coaching. They need to be sharing best practices of what is working and what is not working, and they need to help the team to improve. The next thing is you need to make it fun. You've got to gamify it. Salespeople, in fact, all of us, we're motivated by three things: recognition, competition, and reward. If you can incorporate those three elements into your social selling program, you'll have a successful and sustainable program. So make it fun. Make the program fun. Put a leaderboard up. Who's added the most connections to their network this week? Who's generated the most leads? Who's shared the most posts? Who's written the most articles? Make it fun. Gamify it. Nobody wants to be the bottom of that leaderboard. Everybody wants to be at the top. So you're going to create competition. You're recognizing the people who are performing the best because they're going to be at the top of the leaderboard. And of course, if you build in some rewards, Starbucks gift cards, $50 each month for the person who generated the most leads or whatever. If you make it fun, people will want to participate. So gamify your program. This is important, team. We need leadership support. If you are the owner of the company, or if you're speaking to the owner of the company, they need to understand that they need to be the most active person in social media as it relates to your organization. What a lot of leaders don't realize is that we follow the leader first, the company second. And if you don't believe me, go on LinkedIn and have a look at how many followers Richard Branson has, and then go look at how many followers LinkedIn has. Do the same for Elon Musk. Do the same for any major corporation. The leader of the company will always have more followers. Richard Branson has about 15 million followers on LinkedIn. Virgin has about 150,000 followers. So again, the leader needs to be leading the way. They need to be the voice of the company because they are the voice of the company. So you need leadership support. If you do not have leadership support, your social selling program will wither and die. We need to be measuring our performance. Remember, what gets measured improves. What gets measured and reported improves exponentially. But you can't manage what you don't measure. You can't manage what you don't measure. What gets measured improves. What gets measured and reported improves exponentially. We've got to be tracking the data. We've got to be measuring our performance. We've got to be looking at how many leads are we generating from each post. What types of posts are generating the best leads? We've got to be measuring our performance. You can't manage what you're not measuring. But what gets measured improves. What gets measured and reported, in other words, if we're reporting that up in our organization, that improves exponentially. So we're looking to measure and report our performance. Next, we need tools. There are going to be some tools that you need to run your social selling program. You're going to need a tool to resize and reshape images. I use Snagit. Snippet works quite well as well. I believe Snippet's a free tool with Microsoft. I use Snagit just because it has some extra features and allows me to create videos and such. But you're going to need tools. You're going to need software tools. I use LinkedIn Sales Navigator. It's arguably in business to business the most powerful tool on the planet. I use a scheduling tool called Buffer. So every week, my son, he front loads Buffer with all the posts for the week. So basically we tweet, I think 10 times a day. We post 3 times on Facebook, 3 times on LinkedIn. Those are the platforms that we use. That's where our target demographic is. And my son loads all of those posts into Buffer every Sunday. And then what happens is those posts are automatically posting. So I've actually tweeted probably once while we've been on this call. And I know that there's been probably been a LinkedIn post that occurred while we were on this call. You didn't see me do it because it's automated. So again, there's going to be tools that you need to run your program. And you need to, of course, identify what tools you need for your program. And you need to, of course, pay for those tools. So you need a budget to cover those tools. And the only way that you're going to be able to justify making any kind of investment in your program is if this program is going to deliver a return on that investment. So you need to have figured that out ahead of time. How much revenue do I need this program to deliver in order for me to justify this spend? How much is it going to cost me in tools? How much is it going to cost me in content creation? How much is it going to cost me in our team's time? You need to have all those added together, and that's your budget. And the return that you receive from the program over the year has to be greater than what you spent or you were wasting your time. So again, you need to have a budget, and you need to make sure that that budget ROI is covered. Okay, now before we get into the social selling snapshot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out of the presentation. I'm going to stop the share, and I'm actually going to share. I'm going to go on to LinkedIn. I'm going to look at who are my connection requests. Let's see who's the lucky person. Craig Phillips, you are who we are going to be reviewing today. So, Craig, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go into your profile. Hopefully, everybody can see Craig's LinkedIn profile here. And Craig, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find you on LinkedIn, on here. Craig Phillips, there you are. I'm going to hit allow to talk, and you can now speak, Craig. If you want to unmute your microphone. Craig, are you there?
Hi, hello.
Hi, how are you, Craig?
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, Craig, so I'm going to accept your kind invitation. Thank you for that. And then what I'm going to do, with your permission, is I'm going to give you straight feedback. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem. That's the best kind.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretty it up. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to tippy toe around it. I'm just going to say it like it is. Make sense?
Sure.
All right, perfect. All right, now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to open up another instance of LinkedIn, because what I'll do is I'll dive between profiles to show you different examples. So, and the first one I'm going to show you is Rick Trenholm. All right, so Rick. Now, before we look at Rick's, tell me the background picture that you've got here. What does that represent? Tell me what does that mean?
I probably haven't given that much thought. I had one that was quite wordy and had captions, and it was like, I think I wanted to switch it to something that was more emotional or evocative, rather and keep the words where the words are in the about section and stuff. So that's as far as I could tell you on that point.
Now, you are a software guru, and looking at you're a consultant. Is that right?
Yeah.
Software consultant?
Yeah, for business software.
And
yeah.
You help organizations, you create automated processes and bespoke software to help seal a company's gaps in their workflow. Is that right? That's
right, yeah.
All right, okay. This picture should depict what you do. It should tell me who you are. So I'm going to show you Rick's picture. What does Rick do?
I guess he clears snow for a living, yeah.
You might think he cleared snow or sold bobcats.
Or sold them, or yeah, something of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah, his picture tells you what he does. It's a wonderful background picture. Now there's a couple of things that I don't like about this picture, his background picture. Can you see anything that's missing, Craig?
People, maybe, I guess. Or...
I'm not so worried about the people. More so, there's no company logo.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
You know, the only thing that I believe that picture is missing is a company logo. But if he had his company logo on that picture, maybe in the top right-hand corner, in that little white spot, that'd be the perfect picture. That would tell me exactly what Rick does. And, you know, the second I get on his profile, I know straight away, oh, this is what Rick does.
Sure.
So that would be my first recommendation is get a background picture that really tells people what you do. Okay. Now I might be able to guess from those ones and zeros, but I wouldn't necessarily, it doesn't shout it out to me. So, I might have a picture of you with your computer out showing, consulting with a client, and I might even have some very predefined words in there, but I want a background picture that says what I do.
Okay,
now, Wanda,
good suggestion.
Yeah, Wanda just made a really good point. She says, that picture is great only when it snows. And you know what? I agree. I believe Rick needs 4 of these. I think his company needs to invest in 4 of these background pictures, and I think he needs one for each season. I think you need a spring, summer, autumn, and winter picture because, of course, the equipment changes for the different seasons. So the attachments would be different in spring, they'd be different in summer, different in autumn, and different in winter. And, of course, if you had those different seasons, you wouldn't make me so depressed when I'm looking at Rick's profile thinking, yeah, winter's just around the corner. Thanks for reminding me of that. So I agree, Wanda. We definitely could do with more than one of those. So that would be my first recommendation, Craig. Next, I'm going to come into your headline, which is this part of your profile here. Now, your headline says, softwareguru.ca, streamline your business now. Your headline that headline section of your profile is a keyword searchable field. And my recommendation is that it should say what you do, how you do it, and the value that you bring in 120 characters or less. Now, the best one that I have seen is Alan Morissot's. Now, this is Alan. Now, Alan works for Watson Gloves. Now, what I'll tell you about that background picture is that they rotate that periodically. So those those pictures get rotated quite regularly, and the entire team refresh their images. I'm going to say at least 4 to 5 times a year. But if you look at his headline statement, it tells you what he does, how he does it, and the value he brings in 120 characters, and it is keyword rich. It has many long tail and short tail keywords. And for those of you that don't know what long tail and short tail keywords are, a short tail keyword is one word or 2 word combination that somebody might type into a search engine to look for your products. So for example, gloves. Gloves is a short tail keyword. Quality gloves is a short tail keyword. High quality gloves is a long tail keyword. 3 or more keywords combined together are what we call long tail keywords. This headline statement is packed with long tail and short tail keywords. Helping Canadian companies, long tail keyword. Reduce hand-related incidents, long tail keyword. Hand-related incidents, long tail keyword. Robust hand protection, long tail keyword. Hand protection, short tail keyword. Hand protection programs, long tail keyword. It is packed with long tail and short tail keywords that may be found if somebody was typing in any of those keywords into a search engine. There is a chance that Alan's profile might be found. So again, it should say what you do, how you do it, and the value you bring in 120 characters.
Okay.
Make sense?
Sure. Yeah. I'll give it a go.
Great. Next, I'm going to go into your contact info and really quickly. So first of all, I like the fact that you have customized your vanity URL. So you've taken the Data Flow Guru as your vanity URL, which is great. You've also got your company's website in there, and you have your email address. The only two things that I would add are your telephone number and your company address.
Okay.
And the reason I would do that is because many people, myself included, when we download the LinkedIn app on our phones, we synchronize our contact database with our phones. And what happens is that all of your LinkedIn contacts are automatically ported into your phone. So if you've got that information in there, you've got your cell phone number, you've got your address, you've got your email address. What that means is you've actually updated my phone for me. So if you change jobs and you change this, you're updating my phone for me. So I have a user updated contact database. You're making yourself easy to get in contact with. And of course, only people who are connected with you can see that. So you're not opening that information up to everybody. It's only the people that you've added and allowed into your network. Make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
All right. Next, 242 connections is a good start. I'm going to encourage you to grow your connections. Your connections, your network is your net worth. So the greater your network, the greater your net worth. The larger your network is, the greater chance you have of amplifying your message when you post something online. So I'm going to encourage you to strategically grow your network. Don't just machine gun connect with everybody. Strategically grow your network.
Sure.
In the About section, what I like about your About section, Craig, is that it's not about you. You've written it about your company. Now, what I would encourage you to do, you get 2,000 characters here, and I'm guessing you've taken about 250 to 300 of those 2,000. So I'm going to encourage you to put more information into this About section. And I like what you've written so far, but I would make sure that it was packed with keywords and keyword combinations, because this section is also keyword searchable for search engines. And I would also not just talk about what Software Guru does and why Software Guru exists, but what your role is at Software Guru, why you enjoy working there, and you know, the types of clients that you've helped and how you've helped them. So I would just maybe expand this description and ensure that I have packed it with keywords and keyword combinations, and make sure that I'm repeating some of the keywords and keyword combinations that appeared in my headline statement. Because again, the more times a document has a keyword repeating in it, the more relevant the search engines see that document for that keyword. So the higher up in the rankings you go.
Okay, sounds good.
We've actually had one of our clients, he is a specialist that sells automation equipment, and he is a distributor for Schneider Electric. Schneider Electric are $30 billion organization, and through keyword optimization, he is ranked higher. His LinkedIn profile is ranked higher than Schneider Electric's website for some very specific keywords. So again, if you do this right, you can really improve your SEO, which of course is going to generate more leads, because there's the more chances that people will find your profile when they're looking for the kinds of services that you offer. Got it?
Yeah, I think if I naturally talk a little bit more there about some of the projects I've done or the experience, it does do two things. You're going to get keywords put in there anyway.
Bingo.
And give people confidence that, oh yeah, this guy can do, or this company can do what we want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would encourage that. Now, also in your profile, you have the opportunity, and I'm just going to go into mine for a second. You have the opportunity it's called featured now. Now, featured used to be an extension of the About section, but they've actually broken it up. So you need to add featured content. Now, featured content could be a slide deck, it could be a video, it could be an image. But by adding sort of media to your profile, first of all, you make the profile more engaging. But what it also does is it opens up new keyword searchable fields that you can fill with keywords. So again, you can actually put more explanations and more information about your organization and its capabilities into that featured section. And of course, you're optimizing your profile from a keyword perspective. Make sense?
Okay, gotcha, yeah.
All right, perfect. Now, under your experience, does Software Guru have a LinkedIn page?
No, it doesn't. No, I don't think it does. I didn't get that far.
All right, so we need to build a LinkedIn page because we need to
Okay.
separate Craig Phillips from Software Guru, because we need to build both those brands independently of one another, because one day you may want to sell Software Guru. So you need to build a brand for Software Guru, and you need to build the Craig Phillips brand. So my recommendation is that you need to build a page for your company, and then that way, when you've got your Software Guru logo, when you connect yourself to the company, you'll have the logo next to your position here instead of this gray box.
Right. Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah. Does,
All right, perfect. The other thing I would do is I'd expand your explanation of what your organization does under this section. I would not do it for any of the other companies that you've worked for previously. But what I would do is I would make sure that I have done it for my current position, because you don't want to be directing people away to companies you used to work for. You want them focused on what you're doing now. So I would expand, and again, I'd make it keyword searchable. So I'd make sure that I have lots of keywords and keyword combinations in there. Make sense?
right on, yeah.
All right. Education's fantastic. Oh, you're an electronics engineer. Me too. Okay.
Oh.
On the skills and endorsements. Now, this is where, is railway signaling something that you're interested in now?
No.
No. I'd get rid of that. I would list all the products and services, and you get 50 skills that you can list, and you can create your own. I would create a list of about 30 skills, and I would make them all keywords and keyword combinations that someone might type into a search engine. And then I would make sure that I would get as many of my contacts as possible to endorse me for those skills. Because again, these are keyword searchable fields that will potentially boost your profile's SEO ranking. And then the remaining 20, I would make personal skills, but I'd make them relating to what I do today. But you need to choose the skills and endorsements, because my betting is that you didn't actually choose these. In fact,
I don't think. No, I don't think I did.
What I think happened is this. When you build a profile, one of the things that LinkedIn does is if you don't start to fill out some of the sections, it starts to try and help you to do it. So what it does is it looks at your profile and it says, oh, Craig works for a company like this. Other people that work for companies like that have these skills. So then what it does is LinkedIn actually starts reaching out to your connections and saying, hey, does Craig have business intelligence as a skill? And then, of course, David Atkins says, yeah, he's good at business intelligence. So he endorses you for it. And then the next time you log into LinkedIn, it says you've received an endorsement from David, and all you have to do is accept it. And the second you accept it, it's now on your profile. So what you end up with is a list of skills and endorsements that you haven't really put much thought into, and that don't really help drive business to you through your profile. Got it?
Yeah. Right.
Take control of what's in that list.
Okay.
And this is probably the most important piece, the recommendations. You need to be reaching out to your customers and asking them to write you recommendations.
Okay.
When you've completed a project for a client and they're telling you how delighted they are, Craig, you need to be asking them for recommendations. And by the way, any keywords or keyword combinations that show up in those recommendations will also contribute to your profile's keyword search ranking. So I can't stress this enough. You cannot have too many recommendations, but you can have too few. So you need to be reaching out and asking as many people as possible to write recommendations for you. And the wonderful thing is, if they're willing to write you a recommendation here, it's really easy to get them to share that recommendation to other social media sites such as Facebook and your Google page and your Better Business Bureau listing, and any other site that has ratings, or you can actually get them to just copy and paste it to those places. So I'm going to encourage everybody on this call to, the first thing I want you all to do is solicit 5 recommendations from your connections. And how you do it, Craig, is if I wanted to solicit a recommendation from you, I would go into your profile. So I'm viewing your profile. I would hit this more button here, and I would go to the 4th item on the drop down, which is request a recommendation. I would say that my relationship with you is that you were a client of mine. So I would hit that. I would tell you that my position was sales performance coach at Base Over Apex. I'd hit next, and then I would customize. I wouldn't just send the generic invite, and I would say, hey, Craig, thank you for attending my webinar today. I hope you found the webinar useful. I was hoping that you might consider writing a recommendation for me. Thank you for your consideration. Best regards, Paul. Hit send, and then you get that recommendation request. This is the truth when it comes to recommendations, team. If you do a bad job, you don't have to ask. Customers will write those recommendations on your Google page. But if you do a great job, you do have to ask, because the first thing isn't on my mind, oh, Craig did such a wonderful job streamlining my software for me. I must write him a recommendation. That's not my first thought. So you've got to ask. Make sense, Craig?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right.
I've been soliciting recommendations on other platforms too, but for some reason I haven't done it on LinkedIn. So I need to get better at that.
This is the best one to do it on, because you get to see the recommendation before it's added to your profile. And if you want anything changed, you can ask them to change it. And then once they've shared it here, it's really easy to just copy and paste that into a different platform and just ask them if they'd be willing to share it on your Google page and on your Facebook page. Yeah. So really, really, those would be my major recommendations for your profile. Any questions?
No, I think that's a lot of points that I need to address. And thanks very much for your time, Paul. That's awesome.
My pleasure. All right, team. So I am aware that I have gone over a little bit on our time, so I apologize for that. And I'm gonna need about another 15 minutes of your time to finish. So if you do have to leave, of course, this will be recorded, but I do want to now just talk a little bit about how to conduct a social selling snapshot. So this is an example of a social selling snapshot that we did for a company called Perry Formworks. So what we've done here, and this is not the actual snapshot, this is just the PowerPoint of it. So there's excerpts from it. But what we did was we looked at, if you look at the top left-hand corner, that's their LinkedIn page. Top right is their Facebook, middle left is YouTube, middle right is Twitter, bottom left Instagram, and the bottom middle is their website. So that's the information we grabbed from them. Here's what we grabbed from one of their competition, and here's what we grabbed from another one of their competition. So right away, you can see Illuma have got some work to do in this space. No YouTube channel, their Twitter account has no background graphic, and there's no consistency in their imagery. If you look at Doka have done a wonderful job. There's a lot of brand consistency. They're using the same image on each social platform, where if we look at, for example, Perry, well, there is some consistency. There are some different images here. So they could be a little bit better in the brand consistency across social media. So that's the first sort of takeaway, is make sure that when I get to your site, I know it's your site. And the way we do that is by brand consistency. Next, I'm going to show you this is a great example of true brand consistency. Superior Glove have done a wonderful job here. The next thing I would do is I'd actually do a really deep dive into their analytics. So I'd look at each platform. So if you look in the top left, that's LinkedIn. How many employees do they have on LinkedIn? What percentage of them have a headshot? What percentage don't? What's the average number of connections? Is their brand promise on their profile? Do they have a tagline? How many followers do they have? How often do they update? And then, of course, if you go to the top right, we look at their last 10 posts and we look at the engagement rate for those posts, and we get an average engagement rate. Then we do a really deep dive into each individual in their sales team's profiles. Do they have a background picture? Is it relevant to the industry that they're in? Do they have a professional headshot? Do they have a headline statement that is keyword searchable and speaks to their value? How many connections do they have? Do they have an about section? And again, is it relevant and keyword rich? Is their experience section completed? Is their education section completed and relevant? Are their skills relevant, and do they have, or have they used all 50? How many recommendations do they have? And are their interests, are the companies that they follow, are their interests specific to the industry, and are they following their customers and their competitors? So we do a deep dive. We grab all their images. So you can see right away, there's no brand consistency here from the team. One person has a picture that says Perry. One person has an image that shows scaffolding systems. A couple of people have scaffolding systems, but the rest of them, you know, they've got the generic ones, and Paul Spain's a stargazer by the look of his profile. So again, we want to make sure that we've got some brand consistency. Sam's got a wonderful picture of himself and his son together, but again, that picture is more appropriate for Facebook, not for LinkedIn. It should have a professional headshot. And if I look at Bogdan, bottom right-hand corner, which one's Bogdan? Well, I know because I know Bogdan, but which one would you guess? Again, really difficult to know unless there's only one person in the picture. So we got to be really careful about, you know, the image that we present. Here's some examples of their competition, how they show up. And then here's what you could look like. Now, again, Watson gloves are fantastic. They do a great job. They're one of our clients. There's still room for improvement. I still think their headshots are lacking consistency. I do believe that they should have a color headshot, that your head should take up about 3/4 of that circle. And you should be facing forward and not have a cap on or anything. So again, you know, there's an example of what brand consistency can look like. With just a little bit of effort. Here's an example of a client-centric profile. We talked about Alan's earlier, but there's his value-based headline that says what he does, how he does it, and the value he brings in 120 characters. His about section that is focused on the company and, again, is keyword rich. His skills section has some work to be done. He needs a list of the products and services that his company has to offer. He's got some in there, but he needs to get more endorsements for these skills. Obviously needs more recommendations. He's received one, but he needs more, and he is following his customers and his competitors. And if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, that makes a wonderful calling card. You know, when you first look at his profile, I see a professional here. I see somebody that I can do business with, and I know exactly how this person can help me. So then what we do when we're doing a snapshot is we want to get a sense of, we want to see how we're performing in each platform against our competition. So we would rate ourselves against the competition in a variety of different areas. We have 10 criteria that we measure for each company page on each platform, as you can see, and then we score. So you can see Perry and Dorka are doing very well. They're leading the pack in their industry. But then what we would do is provide recommendations on what Perry need to do to actually be the clear front leader. We also have a look and see how our website's performing. We use a tool called Website Grader. It's free. And you can look and see how your website performs in a variety of different areas, and then how your competition's websites perform in those same areas, and then how you stack up against the competition. So where you're rating there and what needs to be done with your website. And then, of course, these would be, you know, some of the recommendations that we provided to Perry to ensure that they're leading the pack as it comes to social media. I said this earlier, I'm going to say it again. Don't get hung up on metrics. Vanity metrics feed your ego. Sanity metrics feed your family. Don't worry about how many sets of eyes are on your content. Worry about which sets of eyes are on your content. And then I'll leave you with these three very important words: visible, valuable, and connected. First of all, visible. Visibility creates opportunity. If I don't know you exist, or if I don't know what you do, then the chances of me using you are very, very slim. But if I do know you exist, and if I'm seeing you posting regularly in social media and you remain front of mind, top of mind with me, so visibility creates opportunity. Build client-centric profiles. Don't put a resume online. Build a microsite that shows customers how you can help them and why they would want to do business with you. And most importantly, be active in social media every single day. Be active every single day. You don't get a social media six-pack going to the gym 3 times. You got to go religiously every day, every week, every month. And after a number of months, you'll start to see an improvement. After a year, you won't recognize yourself. And 2 years, 3 years from now, nobody will be able to touch you when it comes to social media. So be visible, be valuable to your customers. Create and curate valuable content. Create content that solves my problems. If you have a solution that will make me more efficient, make me better at what I do. So Craig, if you can streamline my business services, then write an article that explains some of the challenges that companies face as it relates to disparate software systems and the advantages that companies can extract if they can just get those systems to talk to one another. Talk about the problem, talk about the solution, and focus on the problem and the solution. Don't focus on your products and services. And then very simply at the bottom of the post, just have a call to action. If you're concerned about, your software not talking to one another and you'd like us to have a look, give us a call on this number. Create and curate valuable content. And if you can't create content that is going to help me solve problems or help me in some way or provide me with insights, then at least curate or create content that will lift my spirits. So create and curate valuable content. The more value that you create for your customers, the more value you can extract. And again, share content with your network every single day. And then finally, connected. Get connected. Your network is your net worth. Your network is your net worth. Strategically grow your network, and you are strategically growing your net worth. My last statistic: salespeople who have 5,000 connections on LinkedIn, not 500, 5,000 connections, hit their sales target 98% of the time. If that doesn't speak to the power of your network, then I don't know what does. Your network is your net worth, but don't fill it with strangers. Fill it with people that you've met. Only allow people into your network strategically. Don't just machine gun connect. So with that, that is the end of the presentation. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to chat into me? And please, by the way, do feel free to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. All I ask is that if you do send me a connection request, please do customize the request and please do say why you are reaching out. So let me know that you attended the webinar today. And that way I know that it's not just a stranger reaching out to me. And I will, of course, let you into my network. I will not IDK you. For those of you that don't know what an IDK is, if you send a connection request to somebody who does not know you on LinkedIn and they say, I don't know this person, and they refuse to accept your connection, you get an IDK logged against you. When you get 5 IDKs, LinkedIn removes your right to send connection requests permanently. From that point on, you can no longer connect with anybody. They can send you connection requests, but you cannot send connection requests. So do not fall into IDK prison in LinkedIn. Their rules and policies are very clear. You should not be sending connection requests to people that you do not know. So if somebody says, I don't know you, that means you violated their policy. You get 5 of those violations and you are out. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. All right, team. I haven't seen any questions come in on the chat or the Q&A. But again, if there are any other questions, you can always drop them to me through a message through LinkedIn. I do hope that you all found this presentation helpful and valuable. And I wish you all the greatest of success with your social selling activities. I can't stress this enough. If you put some time and attention and thought into your social selling activities, you will see results, but they don't happen overnight. Okay, so with that, unless there was anything that Jeremy wanted to say before we said goodbye, I will say thank you and goodbye. Jeremy, anything that you'd like to add?
I would just repeat that. Thanks a lot, Paul. There's comments coming in over the chat that everything was found to be quite informative and everything was put quite well, and I would agree.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Team, thank you all for your time. I wish you all a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.